As this new Friday begins, take a deep breath and set down every burden you've been carrying. The worries that kept you awake, the fears you haven't shared with anyone, and the questions you can't seem to answer don't have to control your heart today. God is already here, waiting for you to place every concern into His loving hands. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by your family, your finances, your health, or the uncertainty of what lies ahead. But this morning, God is inviting you to exchange anxiety for peace and weakness for strength. Before we begin this prayer, stay with me until the end, because today's message may be exactly what your heart needs to hear. If this prayer blesses you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for daily prayer. Together, we'll continue seeking God's presence every morning and filling our hearts with faith, hope, and encouragement. I would also love to pray specifically for you today. In the comments below, write one thing you're believing God for right now. Whether it's healing, restoration, guidance, peace, or a breakthrough, don't keep it to yourself. Let's stand together in faith and believe that God is working even when we cannot see it. And before we begin, type Amen in the comments as a declaration of faith. Let this simple word become your reminder that you are not facing this day alone. God sees your struggles, hears your prayers, and walks beside you through every moment of this Friday morning. As this Friday morning begins, take a moment to slow down and become aware of the thoughts that have been following you into this new day. So many people wake up carrying worries before their feet even touch the floor. Thoughts about family responsibilities, financial pressure, unanswered prayers, uncertain futures, health concerns, broken relationships, and unexpected challenges often begin to fill the mind before the day has even started. It can feel as though anxiety has become a constant companion, quietly whispering fears and creating a heavy burden within the heart. Yet this morning, God is gently inviting you to do something that may seem simple, but carries incredible power. He is inviting you to release every worry into His hands. Not some of your worries, not only the smaller concerns that seem manageable. Every worry, every fear, every burden that has been stealing your peace. Many people believe they must carry their struggles alone. They feel responsible for finding every solution, controlling every outcome, and preparing for every possible problem. The desire to protect ourselves and the people we love often convinces us that if we think hard enough or worry long enough, we can somehow prevent difficult situations from happening. But worry has never had the power to create peace. It only creates exhaustion. There is a difference between being responsible and carrying a burden that was never meant to remain on your shoulders. God never asked you to become the source of your own peace. He never expected you to know every answer or understand every detail of your future. Instead, He invites you into a relationship built on trust. Trust can feel difficult when life becomes uncertain. It is easy to trust when everything seems stable and predictable. It is much harder to trust when prayers appear unanswered, when doors remain closed, and when circumstances refuse to change. Yet these are often the very moments when faith becomes most meaningful. Perhaps there is something specific weighing on your heart today. Maybe you are concerned about your children and the path they are choosing. Maybe you are facing financial challenges that have created sleepless nights. Perhaps you are waiting for medical results or praying for healing. Maybe you are carrying emotional pain that no one around you fully understands. God sees every one of those concerns. He sees the tears that have never been shared with anyone else. He understands the conversations taking place within your heart. He knows the questions you are afraid to ask and the fears you try to hide behind a smile. Nothing about your situation is hidden from Him. Sometimes we think that surrender means giving up. We imagine that releasing our worries means becoming passive or ignoring reality. But surrendering to God is not the same as giving up. Surrender is choosing to believe that God's wisdom is greater than our understanding. It is placing our confidence in His ability rather than in our limitations. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. With every worry, another stone is added. A financial concern becomes one stone. A family problem becomes another. Fear about the future adds even more weight. After a while, the burden becomes exhausting. Yet many people continue carrying it because they have become accustomed to the weight. God is standing beside you this morning, inviting you to put that burden down. He is reminding you that you were never created to live under the constant pressure of fear and anxiety. Your heart was created to experience peace. Your mind was created to rest in His presence. Your spirit was created to find strength in Him. Releasing your worries doesn't always happen in a single moment. Sometimes it is a daily decision. Sometimes it is a choice that must be repeated again and again. You surrender your concerns in prayer, and later in the day, you realize you have picked them up once more. Yet God's invitation remains the same. Come to Him, bring everything. Bring your questions, bring your disappointments, bring your uncertainty, bring your fear. There is something beautiful about beginning the day in prayer, because it changes the direction of your thoughts. Instead of allowing anxiety to set the tone for the day, you allow God's presence to guide your heart. Prayer creates space for peace to enter places that have been occupied by fear. When you choose prayer, you are making a powerful declaration. You are saying that your problems are not greater than your God. You are acknowledging that while you may not control every situation, you know the one who holds every situation in His hands. The world teaches us to rely completely on ourselves. It encourages independence and self-sufficiency. Yet there are moments in life when human strength reaches its limits. There are circumstances that cannot be solved through effort alone. There are seasons when no amount of planning can provide the answers we seek. Those moments often become opportunities to experience a deeper level of trust. Trust grows slowly. It develops through daily experiences. It becomes stronger every time you choose faith instead of fear. It becomes stronger when you continue praying despite uncertainty. It becomes stronger when you continue believing despite delays. This morning, remind yourself that worry does not have the final word over your life. Fear does not have authority over your future. Anxiety does not determine your destiny. God's love remains constant even when circumstances change. His presence remains near even when you feel alone. His promises remain true even when answers seem delayed. Perhaps you have been carrying a burden for months or even years. Maybe you've become so familiar with anxiety that you cannot remember what peace feels like. If that is where you are today, allow this moment to become the beginning of something different. Instead of rehearsing your fears, begin remembering God's faithfulness. Instead of imagining every possible problem, begin focusing on His promises. Instead of allowing anxiety to control your thoughts, begin filling your heart with prayer. You don't need to understand everything to trust God. You don't need every answer to experience peace. You don't need to know what tomorrow will bring to believe that God is already there. Take another deep breath this morning. Release the pressure to control everything. Release the fear of what might happen. Release the weight of unanswered questions. Release the burden of trying to carry the entire world on your shoulders. God is strong enough to carry what you cannot. He is wise enough to guide you through what you cannot understand. He is loving enough to remain beside you through every challenge you face. As this Friday continues, allow your heart to become a place of peace rather than a place of worry. Let prayer become your first response instead of your last option. Let faith become louder than fear. Let God's presence become greater than your anxiety. Let every burden become an opportunity to draw closer to Him and place your trust completely in His loving and faithful hands. As this Friday morning continues, pause for a moment and allow yourself to simply breathe. The day may already feel busy. Your mind may already be racing from one responsibility to another. There may be appointments to keep, decisions to make, people to care for, and challenges waiting for your attention. Yet before anything else demands your energy, God is inviting you to receive something your heart desperately needs. He is offering you His peace and His strength. Many people spend their mornings immediately focusing on their problems. They wake up thinking about unfinished tasks, financial obligations, family concerns, and everything that could potentially go wrong. Before long, their hearts become restless, and their minds become overwhelmed. The day begins with pressure instead of peace. But God desires something different for you. He wants your first moments of the day to be filled with His presence. He wants your heart to become quiet enough to hear His gentle voice. He wants you to remember that no challenge you face today is greater than His power, and no burden you carry is too heavy for His hands. Peace is one of the greatest gifts God gives to His children. Yet His peace is very different from the kind of peace the world offers. The world says peace comes when every problem is solved. It tells us that peace depends on perfect circumstances, financial security, good health, and complete control over our environment. God's peace works differently. His peace can exist in the middle of unanswered questions. His peace can remain even when circumstances are uncertain. His peace can calm a troubled heart while challenges still exist. Perhaps that is exactly what you need this morning. Maybe you're waiting for a breakthrough. Maybe you're praying for healing. Maybe you're carrying a burden that no one else knows about. Maybe you've spent so much time worrying that you've forgotten what it feels like to be completely at rest. God sees you. He understands every concern hidden within your heart. He knows the thoughts that keep you awake at night. He knows the fears that return every morning. Nothing surprises Him, and nothing catches Him unprepared. One of the most comforting truths we can remember is that God is always present. He isn't distant. He isn't unavailable. He isn't waiting for the perfect moment to pay attention to your prayers. He is already with you. His presence surrounds you in ways you may not even recognize. Sometimes we become so focused on our circumstances that we forget to recognize the countless ways God continues to work in our lives. We focus on the doors that remain closed and forget to appreciate the doors He has already opened. We focus on our struggles and overlook His daily provision. Look back for a moment. Think about the difficult seasons you've already survived. Remember the prayers that have already been answered. Remember the obstacles you thought you would never overcome. Remember the moments when you felt weak, but somehow found the strength to continue. That strength didn't come from nowhere. God was carrying you even when you couldn't see Him. Strength is another gift God wants to give you this morning. Many people believe strength means becoming emotionally stronger or learning to rely more heavily on themselves. Yet God's strength often appears when our own strength begins to fail. Human strength has limits. Physical strength becomes exhausted. Emotional strength becomes overwhelmed. Mental strength becomes tired. But God's strength never runs out. He doesn't become weary. He doesn't become discouraged. He doesn't become overwhelmed by the problems that seem impossible to us. When you spend time in prayer, you connect yourself to an endless source of strength. Prayer doesn't always change your circumstances immediately, but it changes you. It changes your perspective. It reminds you that you're not fighting your battles alone. Prayer creates space for God's strength to enter places where weakness once lived. There are days when you may feel as though you cannot take another step. Responsibilities continue to increase, while your energy continues to decrease. Expectations become heavier. The future becomes more uncertain. Those are the moments when prayer becomes more than a spiritual practice. It becomes a lifeline. You don't have to pray with perfect words. You don't need long speeches. You don't need to know exactly what to say. Sometimes a simple conversation with God is enough. Sometimes all you can say is, "Lord, I need you." Sometimes all you can offer is silence and tears. God understands both. He listens to every prayer that rises from an honest heart. This morning, give yourself permission to stop striving for a few moments. Stop trying to solve everything at once. Stop placing impossible expectations on yourself. Allow yourself to rest in God's presence. There is healing in His presence. There is comfort in His presence. There is renewal in His presence. The world constantly demands more from you. It tells you to work harder, move faster, and accomplish more. It convinces you that your value depends on your productivity and your achievements. God speaks differently. He reminds you that your value doesn't come from what you accomplish. Your worth doesn't depend on how much you achieve. Your identity isn't determined by your circumstances. You are loved. You are seen. You are known. You are never forgotten. These truths create peace within the heart because they shift your attention away from your problems and back toward God's love. Imagine beginning every morning with this mindset. Imagine starting each day by placing your worries before God and allowing His peace to settle within your spirit. Imagine facing every challenge with the confidence that His strength will sustain you. Life would still bring difficulties. Challenges would still appear. Unexpected situations would still arise. But you would no longer face them with fear. You would face them with faith. There is something incredibly powerful about choosing faith at the beginning of the day. Faith doesn't deny reality. Faith doesn't pretend problems don't exist. Faith simply recognizes that God is greater than every problem. Perhaps you have been depending entirely on your own strength for far too long. Perhaps you have convinced yourself that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Yet some of the strongest people are those who have learned to surrender completely to God. Surrender doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. When you stop carrying every burden alone, you create room for God's power to work within your life. This Friday morning, allow your heart to become still. Listen carefully. Notice the quiet reminders of God's presence all around you. Notice the gift of another sunrise. Notice the breath within your lungs. Notice the opportunities that still remain before you. Every new morning is evidence of God's mercy. Every new day is another opportunity to experience His grace. Every moment spent in prayer becomes an invitation to receive His peace and His strength. Let your anxious thoughts begin to slow down. Let your fears become quieter. Let your heart become lighter. Instead of carrying yesterday's burdens into today, place them before God. Instead of allowing uncertainty to control your emotions, trust His guidance. Instead of focusing on your limitations, remember His power. Allow peace to settle into every corner of your heart. Allow strength to replace your exhaustion. Allow faith to become stronger than your fear. Allowed God's presence to become the foundation upon which you build this entire day. And as the hours of this Friday unfold, continue returning to that place of quiet trust, remembering that peace is not found in perfect circumstances, but in the unchanging presence of a faithful God who continues to walk beside you through every step of your journey. As this Friday morning begins to unfold, remember that you have been given a brand new day filled with opportunities, possibilities, and moments that have not yet been written. Yesterday may have brought disappointment, frustration, or exhaustion, but today is another gift from God. Every sunrise carries a quiet reminder that His mercy is renewed and that His plans for your life continue to move forward, even when you cannot see them. Many people begin their day by focusing on everything that could go wrong. They replay painful memories, carry yesterday's disappointments into the present, and allow fear to shape their expectations for the hours ahead. Fear has a way of convincing us that our circumstances will never change. It whispers that our prayers will remain unanswered and that our struggles will continue forever. But faith speaks a very different language. Faith reminds us that God is still working. Faith reminds us that today's challenges do not determine tomorrow's outcome. Faith reminds us that no situation is beyond God's reach. Walking through life with faith instead of fear doesn't mean that difficult situations suddenly disappear. It doesn't mean that problems stop existing or that uncertainty no longer affects us. It means choosing to trust God even when the path ahead isn't completely clear. Think about how often fear tries to take control of your thoughts. Sometimes it appears as worry about your health. Other times it focuses on your finances, your family, your future, or relationships that seem broken beyond repair. Fear is persistent because it constantly asks questions that have no immediate answers. What if things become worse? What if the answer never comes? What if the opportunity is lost? What if the breakthrough never arrives? These thoughts can become overwhelming if we allow them to control our hearts. Yet faith gently redirects our attention. Instead of asking, "What if everything goes wrong?" Faith asks, "What if God is already working behind the scenes?" Instead of focusing on what we cannot control, faith encourages us to focus on the one who remains in complete control. This morning, perhaps you're facing a situation that feels impossible. Maybe you've been praying for a loved one. Perhaps you're carrying concerns about your children or your marriage. Maybe financial pressure has become a constant source of stress. Perhaps you're standing at a crossroads and don't know which direction to take. You are not alone. One of the greatest challenges in life is learning to trust God during seasons of uncertainty. We naturally want answers. We want to understand why certain things happen. We want clear directions and immediate solutions. Yet there are moments when God asks us to continue walking, even when we cannot see the entire path. Imagine driving through a dark night with only your headlights guiding the way. The lights don't reveal the entire journey at once. They illuminate only the next portion of the road. Yet that small amount of light is enough to keep moving forward. Faith often works in the same way. God doesn't always reveal every detail about the future. Instead, He provides enough light for the next step, and then the next step, and then another. Many people believe that faith belongs only to extraordinary moments. They associate it with miracles, dramatic breakthroughs, and life-changing events. But some of the most powerful expressions of faith happen quietly. Faith is choosing to pray when you feel discouraged. Faith is continuing to hope after disappointment. Faith is getting out of bed and facing another day even when your heart feels heavy. Faith is believing that God hears your prayers, even when the answers seem delayed. These small daily acts of trust gradually transform the way we live. Sometimes fear becomes stronger because we spend too much time focusing on circumstances and not enough time focusing on God's promises. We become consumed by negative news, painful experiences, and uncertain possibilities. Before long, fear begins to influence every decision we make. This is why prayer is so important. Prayer shifts our perspective. It reminds us that God remains present. It reminds us that our circumstances are temporary. It reminds us that we serve a faithful God whose plans extend far beyond what we can currently understand. Perhaps you've experienced moments in your life when everything seemed impossible, yet somehow things eventually worked out in ways you never expected. Take a moment to remember those experiences. Remember the doors that unexpectedly opened. Remember the prayers that were answered. Remember the difficult seasons that eventually passed. Remember the strength you discovered when you thought you had nothing left to give. Those experiences are reminders of God's faithfulness. His faithfulness isn't limited by time. His faithfulness doesn't disappear when life becomes difficult. His faithfulness remains constant. This Friday morning, choose to fill your mind with truth instead of fear. You don't know everything that will happen today, but God does. You cannot predict every challenge, but God already stands beyond every obstacle you will face. You may feel uncertain, but God remains steady. You may feel weak, but His strength never fails. Fear often demands immediate answers. While faith teaches patience, fear tells us to run. While faith teaches us to remain. Fear magnifies problems, while faith magnifies God's power. The choice between faith and fear doesn't happen only once. It happens repeatedly throughout the day. You may have to choose faith when an unexpected phone call arrives. You may have to choose faith when plans suddenly change. You may have to choose faith when disappointment appears. You may have to choose faith when prayers continue without immediate answers. Every one of those moments becomes an opportunity to place your trust in God. As you continue through this Friday, refuse to allow fear to become the voice that guides your decisions. Instead, listen for God's gentle reminders. Listen for His promises. Listen for His invitation to trust Him. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't the immediate removal of a problem. Sometimes the greatest miracle is the peace God gives us while we continue walking through the storm. That peace changes everything. It gives us courage. It gives us endurance. It gives us confidence to continue moving forward. You don't have to carry yesterday's fears into today's opportunities. You don't have to allow anxiety to determine your future. You don't have to remain trapped by negative expectations. Today is a new beginning. Today is another opportunity to trust God more deeply. Today is another opportunity to choose hope. Look at this new day as a gift that has been placed into your hands. There are blessings you haven't yet discovered. There are opportunities you haven't yet recognized. There are answers you haven't yet received. God is still moving. Even in silence, He is moving. Even in delays, He is moving. Even when you cannot understand what He is doing, His work continues. Allow your heart to become quiet enough to recognize His presence. Allow your thoughts to move away from fear and toward faith. Allow hope to rise within you. Walk through this Friday with confidence. Walk through this Friday with peace. Walk through this Friday knowing that God is already ahead of you, preparing the way, opening doors you cannot yet see, strengthening you for every challenge, surrounding you with His love, and working in countless unseen ways that will gradually reveal themselves. as you continue taking one faithful step after another.